talked about it's been stored for the moment. It's gone over there for the moment. The moment is now. Now is the time to drop on that material and start processing.
The technology exists, the experience exists, the expertise exists, the proven added value, pushing it up the value chain of these products exists. And by doing it, you're ticking so many boxes.
Sometimes we can talk about our underestimated product, especially when we will discuss about our solution, to be able to reuse that product in the normal way, to be able to make a construction product or concrete product.
The first big debate here is probably, what do we call it?
And again, as I said earlier, it's preventing expansion of the quarry, but it's preventing it from getting a virgin material. So we in Bern sampled that material, took it to the lab and seen that there was a good product there to be got. This was tricky material. It was heavily clay bound, and again, water is an issue in there.
But then you have people like Brook, who in Norway, who you stand back and look at just in absolute awe. Their belief is that you don't try to make the curve to match the natural sand. You make the concrete from the product that you produce.
Welcome to Talk You Tons, the new vodcast from CDE for the materials processing industry. I'm your host, Lauren McMaster. I'm part of the marketing team here at CDE, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues from around the world. First up, we have Regis Marty, Business Development Manager for France, Belgium and Switzerland. Regis brings a wealth of experience from equipment sales. Then we have Gary Stewart, Business Development Manager for Ireland. Gary has over 30 years experience in the engineering sector. And Julian Kelly, one of CDE's long-standing CDE employees. He has been with CDE since 2004 and currently focuses on business development across Europe. At each stage of the quarrying process, there are byproducts in the form of overburden, scalpings and crushed rock fines. These are sometimes referred to as quarry waste. But I suppose the first question I want to put to you is that right to be referring to these products as a waste, or do they have a use?
Thanks, Lauren. That's the big debate. Waste by its name, by its definition, then creates an issue in legislation, creates an issue with the certification of product. Anything that's not being used in the construction sector in a quarrying situation is a waste or a byproduct by its nature. Though that does create some massive issues in legislation, and for quarry owners and quarry operators. I think the quarry waste term, or the quarry byproduct term, is an umbrella term for recognition of what it is in the process. And it's not necessarily a waste by the traditional definition of waste. So that's where we find the challenge. That's certainly where we find the challenge when we're talking to the global quarrying associations, these larger PLC companies who are left with these huge volumes of material that hasn't went directly into the construction sector, through the concrete, to the asphalt production from the processes. So yeah, the first big debate here is probably, what do we call it? How do we define it? The simple way is by each individual process stream, the overburden or moran, the scalpings or the dust. I think the difficulty in doing that is that you end up with three terms for every single customer, but pretty much every single customer in this field area would have those three elements.
Yes.
As they conscious now not to use the word waste or byproduct, but as the leftover from their core process.
Yeah, and there's much more of an appetite, especially in recent years, to start looking at that material. People are starting to realise that there's not an infinite resource out there. You have to use what you have. So our customers are coming to us and asking for solutions to deal with overburden, with dust, because planning isn't as easy got as it used to be, and we've all got sustainability targets to meet. And what better way to do that than processing material that traditionally get moved around in the past?
Mm-hmm. And it's not new, Regis. Uh, 20 odd years ago, I know I don't look that old, but 20 odd years ago, the first project I was involved in was with CRH in Dublin, one of their flagship sites, and it was to process the residual material from their traditional processing. It was seen as an economic concept then, so that they were using the material that they had on site and repurposing it back into their core production. But maybe it'll become more of a conversation now today because of what you say, Gary, the focus on sustainability, the focus on the lack of resource, this idea that our resources aren't infinite. If we keep using them the way we're using them, we will run out, as hard as that is to believe.
Yeah, you're right, Yunan, that issue is an issue that, CE were faced off a few years ago, but mainly the queries in their standard process let that product on the site, and of course you're limited space when you got a quarry's exploration, and so more and more sometimes we can talk about their underestimate product, especially when we will discuss about our solution to be able to reuse that product in the normal way, to be able to make a construction product or concrete product that maybe you will discuss and explain us later on.
I think that's a very valid point. It's as much as a space issue on a site than it is to even an economic or an environmental issue. And I suppose they're all interlinked. Planning for quarries is becoming harder and harder to achieve. And Gary, yourself and myself will walk through many a quarry that have.
Oh yeah, we've all got that one in mind, where there's a huge stockpile of grit or a huge stockpile of dust. And not only is that material sitting there not being used, but it's preventing access to the material that's below that. So it's a win-win for the customer in that that material's already been blasted or crushed and processed. If we can make a product out of that and get it out the gate, it's revenue, and it's giving them access to that virgin material that's below that.
That's right. That's it. It's more access to material that's already zoned in their planning. It's a less frequency of having to do the blasting, and again, it's all so interlinked that it still surprises you. I think it still surprises me that when you walk onto a quarry site and you see these stockpiles of material disregarded for the moment. So we're not going to mention all other words, but they're disregarded for the moment. But they are huge. They're overwhelming. Some of the, especially regions around your region, they seem to be, or has been, a drive for the core product, the core process, and at almost not any cost, this move in this material and putting it to one side. Build these huge mountains.
You're right, that's massive cost just to move it. It's just to be able and to get the access at the natural resources, and in the way that when you get scalping product, mainly it's clay, you can go to reach the 50, 60 mil in the best condition. Does it mean you put on the side that gradation? And I remember we discussed with a customer, and they're massive, maybe around 800,000 tons available as stockpile, so it's massive footprint, and we made a trial phase to a city washing plant process, and for them 5 people they're off. We're not so convinced, but okay, we will see. And at the end you get the product. Guys from the lab was saying, okay, that's look like we need to go to make the PSD and the right analysis, and at the end they were convinced that this is the way to be able to process that material, and so that bring them a valuable solution to be able to get some underestimate product and go to the natural resources that they are not yet in the in their revenue. So that's that was a massive good experience for them.
It's not like, excuse me, like some of the industries where we work, where we would have to really try to convince the market or try to convince the industry that this, idea works. We have, as I say, over 20 years ago, my first project, and we had done it before, was the installation of a dust washing solution in Dublin. So there's huge amount of evidence and proof that, the concept itself works. So why do we think it's not as, the uptake on it is not as big as it maybe should be?
I think traditionally water was a big issue. In a lot of quarries, it wasn't processed because, we didn't have the water, or we dry up here in the summertime. There's no point in us even trying to wash that material. But if they bring the CDE technology on board with the AquaCycle and our filter press range, there now is an opportunity to process that material. And what I often find when you go onto a site, that it's a generational thing. Well, my father didn't touch that material because my grandfather put it there, and we always scared away from it. But give us a sample of that material, we'll take it into the lab and we'll test it and look at it. Hold on, there's a 70-80% yield here if you would only process this material. So I think people need to open their eyes to it. And you talked about it's been stored for the moment. It's gone over there for the moment. The moment is now. Now is the time to jump on that material and start processing.
Yeah, and it's, it still blows my mind that water is always presented as maybe one of the challenges. But how many quarries have you been into that are dealing with the water problem?
Yeah.
After the discharge, as opposed, if you think about it logically, the benches go down, they don't go up, go down, yet it's out of the water table. They're huge, big, sealed basins, at a deep level that capture water, and that's yes, it'll dry up, maybe it's not as, the water flow, the water availability is not consistent throughout the whole year. But generally there is water that people are managing and people have a problem with anyway. So, so it always strikes me as a cool or strange that we don't have the uptake, especially for, some of the people with the huge right. Yeah. And as you say, the innovation, all right, innovation has moved on to allow the process now. The innovation is more proven now, maybe, than it would have been. You're talking about the generation thing, where maybe that the idea of an AquaCycle or a progress, was maybe a little bit alien, hadn't been proven as much, maybe more problematic. Back there, but the expertise, the phrase, and innovation move the way it has, it does really close off that issue for people, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And with all the good examples, but a really good example for me is Roadstone down in Mallow, County Cork. They had an issue with scalpings down on the site. Again, as we said earlier, it's preventing expansion of the quarry, but it's preventing them from getting a virgin material. So we went down and sampled that material, took it to the lab, and seen that there was a good product there to be got. This was tricky material. It was heavily clay bound, and again, water was an issue in there. And so we come up with an Agmax based solution with a dual pass Evo wash, and it has surpassed their expectations. They really are over the moon with the product they're producing, and it's reducing their amount of blasting that they're doing, and it's reducing vehicle movements. And as I say, we're recycling the water, which has really worked out really well for them. So they want to replicate that on other sites throughout Ireland, because there's a lot of limestone quarries, particularly down in the Cork area, and there's a lot of sticky clay bound material that has been set aside for the moment, use that term again. So they're jumping on that, and there's more opportunities to be got there.
Probably shouldn't be a surprise, just Regis, that the material surpasses their expectations, because it's their own material. It's the material they're using. I guess it's the process knowledge that we would have from we bring to the table, then, that it allows us to identify what that correct process is to take the material in its current state into the material that they're expecting. But maybe we shouldn't have the secret out of the bag that it is their material, though it's already proven to be used to, because they are doing it.
Mm-hmm. And it's already there. So definitely we are talking since the beginning of their sustainable concept or way to work. But yeah, this is there. This is an issue regarding the footprint, regarding blasting to get the virgin material. But and with our process, okay, with water. But like you said, you know, most of the time water is there when they go in deep in the exploration, and with our process with 95 to 97% of closed side circuit, definitely we are in the way to bring the solution to those issues that you name it, overburden product, fine crushing material or scalpings material. But yeah, we definitely we can bring a lot of solutions before quarries.
And it solves the water issue for many quarries, because many quarries are holding the water, letting it settle, so their discharge doesn't meet the the solids content going out to the local water stream.
Yeah.
So in effect, then we would bring it into a process that doesn't have that requirement. We're actually looking for the solid so we can get back out again as a product. So it solves that problem of discharge. And interestingly, just thinking when I'm sitting here, and I've spoke to you many times really just about the history and the legacy of CDE. One of our biggest catapult moments was a scalping project in the lake area. You'll remember.
Yeah.
I remember that. We took a material that was deemed almost impossible to process. At the time, it was Tony was told that no, you can't do anything with it. Tony had the belief and had the nerve to install the process that he believed would be in the right one, and that was a huge success for that company. It was, and at that time, you remember, on the west coast, the west coast of Ireland and around Dublin and the lake, there was a lot of quarry repurposing, going. It was a huge business.
Yeah. I think if you can process that material, the leak that almost process anything, because it was particularly wicked material, a lot of clay in it. But we went in with two dog washers working in series there, and it proved very successful. And it'd be the job if that pit tank hadn't been productive up to that point, really.
And sort of brings us on to the solution. So there's particularly in that scalpings with that overburden, there's two major things to consider, isn't there? One, we have to liberate that material. We have to consider the clay. So that's one stage. It's okay. We get it through the Agmax, the CDE Rotomax, as we know, is unrivaled in the industry for that liberation, that scrubbing. It's just what we do then afterwards. We have, once we have it all liberated, then we have to be hugely aware of the required output product. Yeah. And what we do with it. Because very often your hard rock scalpings or your hard rock crush fines will be lacking in some of the body, throughout the curve. But that's generally because maybe some processes aren't as efficient at the bottom end, so you lose that bottom end. But with the Evo Wash, the hydrocyclone, you have a very accurate cut point which retains the sand that you want to retain, so helps that curve. Okay, we can't make something that's not there, but it is a highly consistent product for sand use. The good of and certainly in the French market, really, just how strict or how high that requirement is.
Yeah, that definitely bring some solution for customer. They need just to buy a product to be able just to blend the sand curve, especially in the bottom part of the curve. And yeah, the solution is, I would like to say, there.
And you say, yeah, and again, interestingly, that is this common feeling. So if we use a dry product unprocessed, we're going to use more cement than we leave. We know that the cement usage, the whole drive in the industry is to reduce cement content. So dry dust or unprocessed dust is not going to be a viable long-term solution. The the idea then we wash away some of them fines. We leave a gap in the curve or a belly of the curve. And you hit on that point. Yeah. People then will supplement. Yep. With an actual material to produce the correct curve. But then you have people like Fiery who in Norway, who you stand back and look at just in absolute awe. Their belief is that you don't try to make the curve to match the natural sand. You make the concrete from the product that you produce. Technology, with the processing technology, with the admixture technology nowadays, you can get it. You just need to have, and maybe that we're a very traditional industry. A lot of the processes haven't changed in over 100 years. So we're very traditional, and it is people who are breaking the ground, literally and metaphorically, breaking the ground, and with these processes and new ideas that are propelling the use of those set aside products into everyday life and making it a very popular choice now.
Yeah, there's a double-edged sword, just as you're talking, and I'm thinking, that's a good economic model that they have there, but it's also a bit sustainable model in that they're using a product there that has been ignored for a number of years.
Yeah. And the CO2 reduction, less cement, less blasting, less transportation. It's almost that we're ticking all these boxes, and now the technology does exist, both in processing and of the admixture, to be able to produce a certifiable, a comparable concrete product. It's almost as if everything's starting to align, in terms of the industry pressure, the industry focus on technology.
Yeah. Like all companies out there want to be sustainable, but they want to do it in an economically beneficial way. So what you're suggesting there would definitely work there,
Yeah. And the phrase that business for good is good business. You and the Firing Group are a real example of that. And it's something that I particularly have noticed within the region, Lauren, that there's a huge uptick in interest. And there's a couple of pioneers, albeit we have mentioned that it's not new technology, but there's a couple of pioneers who have done it, have proven it, and more importantly, are hugely proud of what they've done and not afraid to share their experiences and their successes. And I guess that, I suppose, the big thing is that we're trying to convey, I guess, across in this series, is that the technology exists, the experience exists, the expertise exists, the proven added value, pushing it up the value chain of these products exists. And by doing it, you're ticking so many boxes.
Definitely. Yeah. And we just need those pioneers. It's a bit like the recycling industry, where someone started off washing muck in Manchester, and they were the first to do it, and they had the benefits for a number of years, and then people see how economically beneficial that is, and they start to copy them. So those pioneers are so important.
That's right. And especially around the Paris region, where you have a high clay content, these industries all cross over and overlap so much, don't they? The experience that we would have picked up in the lake has, propelled us into a position in other industries within the sector, with a great head start. The other industries within the sector that we're involved in now are actually come back to complement the production of this one, the one that we were doing 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We're now learning and continues the circle that we're actually now able to.
Yeah, because as you explained previously, my grandfather did like that, my father did like that, and so the human being is just in the approach to be able to stay in the comfort zone. I got the good product, I got the process to be able to process the good product, so I do it like that. And but they are face of so many issues, and as you mentioned, we with our technology, with our experience, we think all the box with the people around the table, and in that company we can provide the right solution to that quarries issues.
So I think we're probably just about running out of time. So before maybe we wrap up for today, if there's people out there who have these stockpiles of material on their site, what would be that thought you'd like to leave them with?
Look, it's like as I just said a few seconds ago, the technology exists now to deliver a product, a usable product, a comparable product, back into their process stream. It ticks so many boxes, and I think what will happen in most cases, Aaron, is that, as we mentioned earlier, planning and rezoning of quarries is becoming more and more difficult. There will be some sort of a spark that puts stuff in their mind and gets them thinking about it. And if it's not the cost of blasting, it's not the cost of moving it, there will be the moment that they will go to rezone or extend the quarry, and they'll realise that there's a material here that it contains so much value for them. And there's a company delivering solutions for that experience that can take that material in its current state back into their production line and up the value chain for them.
Yeah, I agree. The resource is not infinite. People are going to have to look at what they have and use what they have, and it makes economic and sustainable can build it to do that.
Yeah, and just maybe it's the motto for city. It's one ton at a time, and definitely we were able to look every topics on that to be able to repurpose, as you mentioned, Yunan, the product in the quarry to give the valuation that the customer has expected.
I think you've given us a lot to think about there. So thanks very much for joining for this episode.
Thanks,
Lauren.
Thank you.
For more information, please check out the links below.